term effect on our electoral democracy, the Supreme Court has struck down the electoral bond scheme, comprehensively struck it down, and all the provisions that were made to bring it into effect in the Income Tax Act, in the Companies Act, etc., everything has been struck down. They have held that this violates the fundamental right to information of citizens to know about who is contributing this much money to political parties, etc. They have also struck down the amendment made which allowed unlimited political contribution being made by companies to political parties. So, not only the electoral bond scheme, but also the amendment which removed the restrictions on political contributions by companies, which were that you cannot contribute more than 7.5% of your annual profit by way of political contributions. That has also been struck down as violating the level playing field in a democracy. So the petitions filed by us have been comprehensively allowed by the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court has unanimously struck down the electoral bond amendments. Most importantly, before the scheme, the amendments which were the basis of the scheme have been down from different enactments like the Income Tax Act, etc. And the Supreme Court's view was, which is fundamentally they agreed with our submissions, that this is public information is essential for the functioning of a democracy. And therefore the public has a right to know who is funding their political parties. And if the public is denied that right, then that defeats the whole functioning of democracy itself. And therefore the amendments which were introduced to ensure anonymity of the scheme have been struck down. And based on that, consequently, the scheme itself has been struck down. That's number one. Number two, what was that there was the cap, which was the corporate cap, that even loss-making companies could now donate under the electoral bond scheme without any limit. That also has been struck down because the court was of the view that clearly a loss-making company or unlimited corporate funding is not healthy for a democracy, because those kind of donations will be made only for quid pro quo or to get benefit rather than genuine corporate donations for functioning of a democratic setup. So those were the two big findings, but broadly the Supreme Court has agreed with all our prayers, and the entire scheme, if I can use the word, has been junked.
So the main argument, but the political funding will be regulated and they will bring back the black money in mainstream. So what has the court observed on that?
So the court said, even let's assume that that is your objective. This was not the best way to achieve that objective by anonymizing everything. You could have attained, definitely the court agreed that it's a legitimate objective to have less black money in the system and in electoral funding. But not in a manner like this, where you completely delete all information from the public domain of who is donating. So this was not the least restrictive measure, what the court, what in our constitutional jurisprudence we call the proportionality doctrine. The court applied that and he said this usage of this is disproportionate, even assuming you have a valid objective.
Well, I think that this is a huge ray of hope, not just for A, B, or C political party, but for democracy itself. It's a huge ray of hope for citizens of this country, because this whole scheme, which was the brainchild of my late friend Arun Jaitley, was in fact choreographed to enrich the BJP, because everybody knew that the BJP was in power and that any donations through electoral bond scheme would come to the BJP. But the interesting part is that this electoral bond scheme had nothing to do with elections. It was really the bonding between the corporate sector and the BJP, which received the largest number of donations. And the donations they received over the years amounts to about 5,000 to 6,000 crores. Now, with 5,000 to 6,000 crores in your kitty, which is not to be used in elections at all, right? You can topple governments, you can build your infrastructure as a political party, you can build the infrastructure for the RSS, you can set up your communications network throughout the country, and if you and you can do what you like in terms of the use of accountability. So I think to that extent, it's something that's significant has happened in terms of the future of our country, because funding should be done in such a way that it does not skew the free and fairness of the election, because free and fair elections is the basic feature of our constitution. Now the question that arises is, the income tax amendment has been set aside, has been quashed. The amendments to the Companies Act have been quashed. The amendment to the Representation of Peoples Act has been quashed. So you go back to the old law now, right? What's also significant is that the State Bank of India, through which the bonds were sold, has to disclose the details of the bond and in whose name they stand to the Election Commission of India within 3 weeks of the date of this judgment. And within 1 week thereafter, the Election Commission has to display it on their website, which means we'll get to know as to who gave whom to which political party. And this doesn't apply only to the BJP. It'll apply to state governments also, where political parties have been funded, whether the Congress was in power or the BJP was in power or other parties were in power, right? So we'll get to know the bonding between those who funded and the politics of the country.
உடனுக்குடன் செய்திகளை தெரிந்து கொள்ள சன் நியூஸ் பெல் ஐகானை கிளிக் பண்ணுங்க.